Call to order the June 3rd County Commission meeting. Happy June.
Absolutely.
Already, summer.
Happy hurricane season.
Yes, no hurricanes this season, hopefully. We'd like to have Pastor Doug Vogt please come to the podium, and from the First Church of God, and Commissioner Gary Wheeler do the pledge. Good morning.
Good morning. Pleasure. Praise you. Almighty God, thank you this morning for the day that we enjoy already. Thank you for the beauty of creation, your handiwork. Thank you for your very presence in this county and in this room. As we begin to launch into this meeting, we pray that you'll guide all these men and women, that you'll help us all to hear your voice, to be mindful of the biblical injunction to love the Lord our God with all our heart, mind, soul, and strength, to love our neighbor as ourselves. Lord, thank you that as we look at the business before us, you will help us to walk peaceably and honorably before all men. Would we be mindful, God, that you are the difference in this room. You can help us, for you are all wise and all powerful. Thank you for calling us to such an occasion. Thank you for all the good that is being done in our county. But we need your help. We thank you that you are one who is more than dependable, and you will guide us and bring us to the answers that please you. So we thank you this morning for these people as they gather and put their minds together, that you'll help them to see what is most important and what is best for the county. We love you, God. In Jesus' name we pray.
Amen. Thank you.
Join me in the pledge to our country, please. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have additions, deletions to the agenda, and I understand we need to pull item 8T, please. Any others? May I have a motion?
Move to approve the agenda.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Passes 5-0. Approval of minutes, special call, April the 28th, 2008.
So moved, Madam Chair.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
5-0. Consent agenda. Anyone like to pull anything from the consent agenda? I would like to do S, please.
Madam Chair.
Any others?
Yes.
Okay.
I'd like to pull K, L, M, and S.
K, L, M, and
S is in
S
Sam.
also? Okay. Anyone else?
Madam Chair, I'd like to pull H. And did Commissioner Wheeler pull N or not?
M as in Mary, right?
M.
M as in Mary.
You want
and
N?
N as well, please.
As in Nancy?
As in Nancy, yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay. May I have a motion?
Move to approve the consent agenda as amended. Second.
Thank you. We'll start in alphabetical order. H. Who pulled H?
I did, Madam Chair. Thank you. This
Well,
is
did I have a vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Sorry. Moving too fast. H, please.
Yes, ma'am. This is a Quail Creek PD request for another extension. This is the third request for an extension from this development group. I went back and looked at the tape of their September 4th, 2007 meeting, their last extension request. On that tape, the developer told us they were 95% complete. They were addressing the county's concurrency certificate initial punch list. They were very close to completion. And they also promised that other issues I had with the family here would be resolved, and those issues have not been resolved. And I'm just kind of tired of some of these developers coming in, postponing everything, pushing it off, and I'm just ready for these things to get done. And so therefore, I would like to move that we deny the request for extension.
I'll second that.
All right, discussion. Do you have anything from staff or the petitioner?
Hi.
Good morning. Your name and address, please, for the record.
Matthew Markovsky, 1400 East Oakland Park Boulevard, Fort Lauderdale, Florida, 33334.
And who are you representing this group?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have something to say to us?
Yes, I do. We did have a problem, and last time we were there, we were 95% complete, but during the inspection period, there was a problem with the lift station. So we had a dispute with our developer contractor, and unfortunately it's in litigation at the court and we hired a new development contractor, and we're asking for the extension. It's only a 3-month extension to finish the lift station that we had a problem with the previous contractor that was brought to our attention by the utilities department. And correcting that problem, and then after that, we should have our CC, knock out the punch list, do the punch list from the county, and have our certificate of completion. So we're just asking for a minor 3-month extension. We already have a bond in place for $629,000. The county's protected. They can pull the letter of credit if we don't finish. I think it's to the best interest of the county for us to finish the development and get a certificate of completion. So it's a CC project.
I believe when you were here back in September, you also promised that the other issues I had would be resolved, and they have not been resolved. And so I don't have any sympathy if you're having trouble with your contractors. You've had 9 months to.
What issues are we talking about?
Jared knows, and you address those on September.
Yeah, the Citrus Springs.
Yes.
One development has nothing to do with the other development. I'm here representing Quail Creek,
I understand that.
not Citrus Springs.
I understand that. But you gave me assurances back in September that those issues would be resolved, and they have not.
Assurances that we would try to resolve.
No, you said they would be resolved.
The issues we tried to resolve with the person. She didn't accept the resolution.
No. That is a flat-out lie. You want to go there with me? We'll go there. Because I was at a meeting there.
I'm here.
Just a minute, just-
Quail Creek, not Citrus
All right.
Springs.
Just a minute. Let's ratchet this down a little bit, please.
I'm here to talk about Quail Creek, not Citrus Springs, the job that's been completed over 3 years ago. I'm sorry.
Yes, we are talking about this agenda item at this moment.
That's what we're talking about, correct?
Yes.
So I'm here to ask for an extension on Quail Creek for 3 months from today, so I can get a CC, and that's why I'm here. I'm not here to talk about Citrus Springs and other problems with other people.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Mr. Collins, assuming we do not renew this and for a 3-month extension, can you go through the timetable or what happens legally from this point forth?
Well, technically, there's a default because the time for completion of construction has passed. If the extension is not granted, the county would call the security outstanding, have to go out to bid to complete the work, manage the project, and the balance of the funds that were pulled from the letter of credit not utilized to complete a punch list would be returned to Mr. Markovsky's group.
So we would be in the business of the lift station?
Finishing this subdivision.
How do we tighten up where we are in our position? Because I can't say I disagree with Commissioner O'Brien, but at the same time, I don't want to be in the development business either.
Well, this modification requires an extension to the letter of credit, and we may already have that. Not sure. No, the extension is conditioned on the letter of credit and the amount of $620,000 being extended for 6 months. He's asking for 3 months to complete. The security would remain in place for 6 months. So if something wasn't finished within the 3 months, we still have 3 months to try and work it out before getting into the business ourselves.
Madam Chair.
And that letter of credit, excuse me, was already given to Nancy at the county attorney's office.
Mr. Fletcher?
Madam Chair. For Joe Baird. Joe, how long do you think it would take us, assuming that the appeal is denied, how long will it take us to complete this job and get that subdivision up and running?
Well, that'd be hard to answer. We have to evaluate it. I don't know who's got a contract to do the work. We're supposed to find out who's in litigation on file, who's got a contract. I've got Mike Hodgkiss is here. He might go to answer their questions.
I'll take the best case scenario.
Mike Hodgkiss, Capital Projects Manager with Utilities. We have a labor contract with 2 contractors, Derico Construction and Utility Construction with George French. So we can just get bids from those 2, based on our labor contract per unit cost to see which one comes out cheaper. It's my understanding, I think all that's needed to be done is to construct some gravity sewer.
With the lift station, they had to rip up some of the asphalt back there and they have to replace that. And we already hired a new contractor, Mansell, to do the work, and they're out there on a daily basis working, trying to get it done.
Okay. So we just have to get,
How long do you think it would take us to get that work performed?
probably not long at all. I'd say probably within a month or two.
Thank you, Ms. Hotchkiss.
I mean, personally, I don't know why the county would want to get involved in that, and I mean, we'll be done with it within the 3-month period on the CC. So if we can do it ourselves, it should be in the county's best interest for us to finish it.
Madam Chair, I really feel like the best position for the county to be in at this point would be to not come back to this situation again. And I would almost rather do something I'm not in the favor of pulling it right now, but I don't want to come back in here for the decision to pull it just in case you're telling me the same story in another 30 to 60 days. And I don't know whether there's any variation of Commissioner O'Brien's motion that we can get accomplished here that would basically state, okay, if they don't get it done in 60 days, then we move forward to start pulling and doing that. But I really do think that county resources can be better well spent somewhere else other than finishing somebody's subdivision for them.
And also, our lender has already signed the contract with us. They're paying the contractor directly, so they have every incentive to get it done as quickly as possible.
Commissioner O'Brien, understanding your frustration and truthfully agreeing with you, could we give a 60-day delay and then
Revisit this?
Actually, I don't want to revisit it. I want to go ahead and pull the hammer. I don't want this again. I mean, whether you're going to get it done, or then we will get into the development business and finish this project. But I don't want it to come back before us again. I just go ahead and let's make the decision to pull it in 60 days if it's not done.
I'm not sure would that be based on they'd have to have a certificate of completion in 60 days, and if not, we pull the letter of credit?
I think so.
Is that something we can do, Will?
Yeah, I think you can. You have the option to extend. He's requested, it looks to me, till September 6th and
That's
June,
90
July,
days.
August, September. You're giving him half the time he requested, basically.
And then let's go ahead.
I think you have that discretion to.
And if they're out there every day,
Well, if Mike thought we could get bids and get it done in 2 months, they're already working on the job, they ought to get it done in 30 days.
that's my point. That's really, I feel like that there's definitely no taking advantage of the system. And we go ahead and authorize to pull the letter of credit in 60 days in the event they don't have their certificate of completion.
Do you think you can do that in 60 days?
Yes.
Okay, let's vote on that, up or down.
Well,
I'll amend my motion to give them 60 days to get a certificate of completion, and if they do not, we will pull the letter of credit.
not to come back before us, but to pull it.
Pull the letter of
And
credit.
staff will take,
I'll second that.
well, we have a second.
I'll let Commissioner Wilson.
Okay, Wheeler, you
Well, I
have anything
seconded
else?
the last one, so, no.
Anything else?
Nope.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you. We don't want to see you again. Good luck.
That's nice.
K. Who pulled K?
I did. KL&M. These are all sidewalks down at Citrus Springs, and they've come in and they were late asking for the extension. They've had other extensions. I went down there and drove around, and they've only got sidewalks on one side of the street, and the lots that aren't filled yet, there's no sidewalks there. But yet there's quite a few residents there. And I would like to see those sidewalks put in and not give an extension. I'd like to see them go ahead and do it. There's single-family homes in there for the most part. I couldn't get into the other part that's finished, the gated community. But I think they need to complete those sidewalks for the residents that are there. And the problem is occasionally backing trucks over them when they build the new houses, a crack or something. But that's the final punch list, and then go back in and replace those sidewalks. The other thing is, I got to ask, Stan still here? I know there's sidewalks down there 4 foot wide, and that's from Stan what he told me. That was the requirement back then. What year did you say 99?
That's right, Stan Bowen, Planning Director. 1999 was when the project was first approved conceptually, and the preliminary plats came in within the next couple of years after that. About a year and a half ago, the Road Awareness Committee changes to the ordinance were put into effect, and it's 5-foot wide sidewalks now, not 4, but they were approved when the requirement was 4 feet wide for local streets.
Well, anyway, my position is I'd like to make a motion that we deny the extension and that we get the sidewalks put in.
Do I have a second for that?
Second.
Discussion?
Madam Chair, this is, I've kind of been involved in this a little bit as well. These were the letters of credit that I brought up about a month and a half ago to pull. Subsequent to that, we have had some meetings with the representative for SunTree. We're making a little progress. We had a meeting yesterday. Have not gotten a resolution back from the SunTree representative as far as what they're planning to do from that meeting. But I know a lot of the residents down there are trying to get a resolution to their living down there, and this has been one of the issues they've had. And again, like the previous item, I think it's just time to get these things done.
And this has been an ongoing problem for the last 3-4 years with SunTree and Citrus.
Absolutely.
And
I'm tired of it.
I am too, and it's just there doesn't seem to be any interest in making their customers happy after they sign the closing.
I'm ready for the question.
Wait just a minute, please.
You also have to understand that our code contemplates that the sidewalks be built as the units be built, and that the code provides for 2-year extensions up to 10 years to complete the projects. And in larger projects, it's not realistic to think that all the sidewalks are going to go in before the houses, and then the concrete trucks that pour the slabs have to go over and crush them. That's the reason we have allowances for longer time periods to put sidewalks in, and allowances for extensions, so that there can be a build-out of larger projects.
Mr. Fletcher?
But, Will, what can we anticipate getting fixed for the citizens of Citrus who have been quite fatigued for several years? And this came out before we took office.
I think if you don't extend and you pull the security, we would again be required to go out to bid, put in all the required sidewalks, and in all likelihood, sidewalks that went in before the houses would be substantially torn up during construction of the houses, which might not be a happy situation for the residents either.
All at the developer's dollar.
Pardon me?
All at the developer's dollar.
Right.
Yeah, who would fix the sidewalks?
Well, I mean, they wouldn't fix them.
Yeah, they would.
Once the work is put in, their obligation would have ceased.
Right. Then it's the homeowners, right?
If they had to be repaired, it would be a charge against the lot owner who was building the house.
There's a punch list. Which could, no, what we're saying is if we put them in and then someone comes and builds a house 3 years later and tears up the sidewalk, that's where the concern is. We put them in now. Once we put them in, all our obligations are over with. Then if we have a cement truck building a home, 2 or 3 years later tears it up, it's between the owner of that lot and the homeowners association. So you're creating another situation that potentially could occur down the road. That's what
The difference between this and the other one, Commissioner, is they've got a certificate of completion on this subdivision. They're able to build houses. The one that just came before us, they did not have a CC. They could not put a house on it. And that's the difference. So the CC and the punch list happens before the punch list happens before the certificate of completion.
So you're saying the whole subdivision now is out of the hands of the developer?
No, I'm saying
Because they're asking for,
yeah.
as I understand it, and you know, I see Bob in the back, but as I understand this with subdivisions, when they're approved, there's a final approval process where they do the last lay of the blacktop. They go around, they check for pavers that are bad, they check for sidewalks that are bad, and they all have to be brought back up to standards before this is turned over to the Property Owners Association. Am I wrong? Yes and no. I'm just
He's got a PowerPoint.
Yeah.
You know it's going to happen.
Community Development Director. Generally, you're correct. Yes. What we have, the way the process works is a preliminary plat is approved, and then an applicant can come in. He has to actually get 70% of his infrastructure complete, and after he gets a land development permit, and then he can come in and get final plat approval, and he can enter into a contract for construction for the rest of the subdivision improvements, and he puts up a bond or some kind of surety to guarantee that he will do the work. The certificate of completion indicates that all of the horizontal infrastructure was put in adequately, but he can bond out sidewalks at that point, and I think the final lift of asphalt too. So those are done after the certificate of completion.
Well,
In fact, we have separate contracts for the normal horizontal subdivision improvements and a separate contract for the sidewalks because it's anticipated there'd be different time frames. So you can get a certificate of completion on your subdivision improvements and still have in place a contract for sidewalks that gives you more time to install.
But you know, the situation we're in today, that's all single-family homes down there. They've got children, they got people out walking their dogs and walking, etc. The market we're in today, it might be 5 more years, 10 more years before they finish those houses. And that sidewalk's not there for the convenience of the residents that wanted to move into a completed neighborhood with the amenities there. And I think the sidewalks ought to be put in. And just because, I mean, sidewalks don't break just because a truck backs over them. Some will break, some won't. And I think that they should complete those sidewalks so that also they ought to be taking care of the vacant lots down there and keeping them cleaned up and keeping them mowed so they fit in with the rest of the neighborhood, and they aren't doing that either.
So the dilemma sort of is, do we require them to go ahead and put the sidewalks in at a certain risk to the property owner down the road, and it's minimal?
Because we're going to inspect the sidewalks once they get them done, and we're going to say, yes, these meet our requirements. And then they're going to drive trucks over them and build houses, and then they're going to come back and they're going to say, well, wait, they met your requirements back when we put them in. We don't have to. They don't have to meet our requirements now, do they? Is that the dilemma that we're talking about getting ourselves into? Because they're going to have it inspected, and it's going to get our stamp of approval before they build houses over the top of them.
If the sidewalks are put in now and a house is built on it subsequently, when we do the CO inspection for the house, we will make sure that the sidewalk is adequate at that time.
Okay, so whose responsibility will it be to make the sidewalk adequate at that time?
The homeowner.
Builders.
Okay.
That's right.
All right.
Even though sidewalks crack, cement cracks periodically because land shifts and things like that, that still is the builder's responsibility, just a normal crack
Yes.
to be replaced, right? Or no?
I'd let engineering look at whatever the tolerances are, but generally they're going to be looking at making sure that the site is adequate at the time of certificate of occupancy for the house.
Okay.
So what is your pleasure, gentlemen?
Commissioner Wheeler, you made a motion on that, didn't you?
I made a motion to deny the extension.
On all three?
Well, I'll do them one at a time, but yeah, it'll be all three. They're all the same, K, L, and M.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Well, we're do them individually. K.
Okay.
Aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Passes 5-0.
Look at that.
And I'll make the same motion to deny the extension on L.
L. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. M.
And same motion, deny the extension on M.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you. N. Who pulled N?
I did, Madam Chair. This is a similar situation, although I think in this one, the developer has put some cash towards completing the project, if that's correct, Bob, or?
Actually, this is a little different situation. Phase 2 is a subdivision that has both single-family houses and townhouses, and the sidewalk in question here goes along the townhouses. And the townhouses have already been platted, and I talked to Mr. Paladin a couple of weeks ago about actually eliminating the bond with the requirement for the sidewalk, but in this case, the road the townhouse portion of the subdivision accesses another tract that's been approved as Paladin Hammock, and that tract is accessed through the road that goes through the townhouse portion, and therefore the road is in, but staff feels that the sidewalk needs to be there to provide access to Paladin Hammock when it's developed. Normally, we don't have the same concern about putting in sidewalks in the townhouse development as we do single family. The bottom line is we look at this one differently from the Citrus Springs project, because Citrus Springs are all individual single family lots. This is townhouse units, and we think it's different. In this case, the staff feels that the bond should be allowed and that the requirement be extended.
And on this one, they have substituted cash as the security, and
yes, there was an amount of money that's being released as part of the maintenance security out there, and the maintenance security amount has decreased because of the bonding requirement change regarding the insurance company. The A-class, there was an additional security required to compensate for the insurance company having a lower risk. That amount of security is being released, but a portion of it is being retained to secure the sidewalk.
okay. And then, Mr. Paladin, are we moving forward with this, and hopefully by the time this extension is done, we'll have these sidewalks in, or?
No, we can't say that because Joseph Paladin, President of Lion Coast Construction Development, it's my development. We put all the sidewalks in the common areas. The only sidewalks that aren't in are the ones that are required in the townhouse area. And I sold the townhouse lots to a builder that's going to build the townhouse. And he'll be building the sidewalks when he builds the townhouses. So until he builds the townhouses, I don't really want to put the sidewalks in because, as it's been expressed earlier, when trucks back up over it, they'll probably be damaged and they'll have to be replaced. He'll replace them. I mean, the county or HOA won't be responsible for it. But meanwhile, putting the sidewalks in is kind of a waste of value and a waste of time. And like this is a separate situation because most of the time in a townhouse development, we don't require the sidewalks to be put in ahead of time. We require them to be put in as they build the structures. But this design sort of resembles a development design rather than a townhouse design where it's all in parking lots and stuff. So that's why, I'm not speaking for Mr. Keating, that's why I believe Mr. Keating is requiring the sidewalks to be a part of this. But I can't guarantee when we're going to put the sidewalks in, unless you all want me to guarantee we're going to put the sidewalks in before they start building the townhouses. It goes to nowhere. I mean, until they build the townhouses, they go nowhere. All the sidewalks that go somewhere are in. So, I mean, I don't know if you
Okay, so none of the townhouses have been built at all in this whole phase?
No, sir.
Okay,
You
all right.
know, and then, realistically, putting the sidewalks in,
All right, so just here we don't have like half the townhouses in, people living there, but no sidewalks. This is just all still
and really,
their land, okay.
how I got involved in the sidewalks to start with, to get a CC, we had to bond out the sidewalks in order to get a CC for me to close on the property. So I did that.
Okay.
And it was supposed to start right away, but the market dictated that didn't happen. So I don't think it makes any sense for us to put that one row of sidewalks in to go anywhere. But I'm going to speak to the builder to see what their plans are. And if it's cheaper for me to put the sidewalks in and then let you hold my cash, I might wind up doing that. I don't want to promise that at this time because I don't really think it makes any sense.
Right, okay, that's clear.
I just want to get clear in my mind real quick. So the difference between this and Citrus Springs is what?
Nothing's there.
Nothing's there.
I believe there's no dwellings.
Yeah, I just want to confirm that, though.
Mr. Bacon.
This graphic shows Mountain Place 2. You can see on the upper part, the north part, those are townhouse units. Those townhouses are platted, but we treat those works as a site plan, that bigger part, because they don't have to build each townhouse building together. The bottom part are individual single-family lots, and it's not a sidewalk issue there.
Okay.
The sidewalk issue's already been taken care of there.
Okay.
If you look at the road that goes through the townhouse area, if that road just stopped at the property line, we would have told Mr. Paladin that he could actually be relieved of the sidewalk obligation until he came in and actually started building the townhouse units. But because that road extends to Paladin Hammock, right over there, it has preliminary plat approval, but it does not have final plat approval yet. And the only access to Paladin Hammock is through that road that bisects the townhouse units. Staff feels that the sidewalk should be along that road to provide pedestrian access to Paladin Hammock residents up to County Road 5.
Okay.
And for the record, the same people own Paladin Hammock now that own the townhouse development.
Okay.
So I don't know neither one.
So this is a different scenario than probably.
And that gives me even less control of the prompt what I'm going to do.
Does that satisfy you, Peter?
Yes, ma'am, I'm good.
Okay.
I think there was a motion to deny. Whether it was voted on, I don't recall.
No, we didn't make a motion on this one yet.
A motion. There was all three of them, and the three had to deal with Citrus Springs.
Well,
That was
I
the K,
think there
L,
was a
and
fourth
M.
motion. If there was no vote, you need to make a motion either to extend or not to extend.
Right.
Right, okay.
Yes, name and address for the, name and address, please, for the.
Yes, it's Charles Boudreaux, Government Florida with Three Partners. We have the same, I think it's the same situation Mr. Paladin has. There's no guarantee all those townhouses are going to be built at the same time, so the sidewalks are going to be inconsistently done. We requested the extension, we denied, and I'd like for y'all to reconsider that. If y'all want us to put the sidewalks in at Citrus Springs, that's fine. Let's be across the board with everybody.
Well, wait just a minute. You're now back to Citrus Springs talking about that?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, we're on this issue right now.
I think Commissioner Wheeler will enlighten him
This
on that.
gentleman motioned the,
Well, I know, but he's not in. I don't mean that
Favors in
unkind.
charge.
Yeah.
You were trying to tell me something, and I said, you need to speak from the mic. That's what I said.
I think Commissioner Wheeler can differentiate.
I think there's a tremendous difference between Citrus Springs and the townhouses. First, there's nothing there. And you've got a lot of houses down there with vacant lots that you don't have sidewalks in front of for the neighborhood to use, and they're broken up and split up. You've also got a lot of lots down there ought to be mowed and taken care of for the sake of the neighborhood, too. I can't imagine that the neighbors are happy with mowing their lawn and taking care of their shrubs, and you got tall weeds and stuff growing in the vacant lots. So there's a big difference between the townhouses where nothing exists and where your neighborhoods are probably 70, 80% complete.
Madam Chair, can I say something? Commissioner Wheeler, based on what the gentleman just said, well, I'm not familiar with, we have a similar situation on Hidden Lake, which is one of our subdivisions. And this is a subdivision where it's all housing like that. And we got down to the last 4 or 5 blocks that weren't built on, and we just put the sidewalks in so that the people could, get around the neighborhood. So we did complete that in the subdivision where it was all housing. This one here, if we put this sidewalk in, I don't really know what they're going to do with Paladin Hammock because I don't own it. And I'll come back at a later date maybe when I figure out what they're going to do and maybe ask them to do these spots and have them put up a bond. But my sidewalk now, if I put that sidewalk in, it would go to the end of the street and stop the woods. So, I think that we can require them to put the sidewalk in when they start building the townhouses. And they build the first one, they can be responsible for that. Okay. I have no problem making that provision.
Right, and when we look at this again in 2 years, if half the townhomes are in, we may say, put the sidewalk in now because you got people living there.
As you should.
Right.
And then you may be in the same position.
Right.
The main difference is this is a field.
Right.
I mean, there's just nothing there. And so
It would be foolish to.
Mr. Boudreaux, I don't know if that's clear between this project and the one that you're talking about, but I see a marked difference. I just see the difference between clear field and skip lots in a subdivision.
Okay, we're back to.
Chair, I'd like to move staff recommendation.
I second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Passes 5-0. Thank you. S. This is a right-of-way acquisition road. I think Mr. Wheeler and I pulled this. I'm wanting to know the process. I'm hearing conflicting information that the homeowners sometimes are not given their rights, and would like for staff to explain the process and how we go through this. Mr. Wheeler, do you have anything else you would like to add on that?
No, the only thing I was going to suggest is that we pull this and add it a week or 2 weeks out.
So we can look into this?
So we can meet with the attorneys. We met with some people that came around and talked to us yesterday and pointed out that there's some, potentially some inconsistencies in our process, and that people aren't being notified that they have a right to an attorney and an appraisal and so on and so forth when they're approached to buying the property. And I'd like time to find out if that's accurate or not. And because I think that when we approach someone and we're looking at eminent domain, which is it's not a good thing to do, but when we look at that, we need to make sure that we're being completely fair with the residents that we're talking about taking the property from, and they need to understand that the county's in a position where, if requested, we take care of the attorney, we take care of the appraisals and so on and so forth. Because a lot of people look at that and say, well, I may not agree with it, but I can't afford an attorney, and they aren't aware that that the attorney is at the county's expense. And
I think that's.
We arrest people and give them all their rights and tell them they have a right to an attorney. So,
Well, I guess you would know that as a former sheriff.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I would like to have the opportunity, in the event that the seller still wants to move forward, that we can. I don't know.
Right.
It's one of those things. If, for example, this could be a retiring couple. They could be, or they're, could be counting on the cash for some family. I just, I would hate to stop this if they still want to move forward, but at the same time, let them know that we are going to somehow.
Yeah, and this is not a complete take either. This is just a portion. It's 138 feet long by 7 feet wide. I think that if they want to,
it's been signed by them, and I don't want us to. It's almost like I'd like to let them say, okay, are you sure you still want to move forward with this before we sign it?
Right.
But they've executed this agreement. They may be in favor of it. I haven't talked to them, so I don't know.
I haven't talked to them. Let me tell you what I do understand from, and this is hearsay, but I talked to an individual that said that they weren't happy with this when they understood.
Right.
And I think if we pull this for a week, or even 2 weeks, to have time to look into this, I think a week would be sufficient. Then they can be notified, and I don't know if they're here or not. If they're here, they could speak for themselves.
I get kind of confused when someone signs in a document and someone else speaks on their behalf and it's their property.
Well, I get kind of confused when people sign a document when I'm told they don't understand the full intent of the document or how things work. I don't know that that's a fact, but I'd like to give the benefit of the doubt.
Yes.
And make sure that they're being treated properly.
Wait just a minute. Mr. Collins?
Well, to bring it back next week, we'd have to have all the investigations and issues resolved by tomorrow morning to get it on next week's agenda.
About 2 weeks.
So I think coming back the 17th makes more sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
We have a staff. Would you like to say something?
Chris, Assistant Public Works Director. Now, we did negotiate with the owners for the better part of a year, and the original offer was based on appraisal, and then we sweetened the offer a little bit to try and get them to agree to the sale. They did agree to the sale. They signed the purchase agreement, and on that basis we brought it forward. But it's the board's pleasure if you'd like us to.
Yes.
I think we could answer this question relatively simple. I'm not trying to rush this at all, unless the sellers would like to have this expedited. And if we can just perhaps give them a call, get something in writing by tomorrow so that we can move forward for the next meeting, that's fine. If there is any issue, then I'd like some solutions brought up 2 weeks from now. That would give us enough time to be able to do this. And I think that's about as fair as we can possibly play this.
But in the process, I would like to know the process.
Yeah.
And I want it on record, and how we basically approach, and if they are told all of their rights and the whole gamut, not just if they ask the right question, because a lot of people don't know to ask the right question. Yeah. And then if they ask the right question, we want the second and third question that they should ask too.
Exactly.
Not that we need to hold their hands through everything, but we are a community and a county that does pride ourselves in the way we do business.
I think we need to, and I know we do here, and I hope, and I believe staff does too, but we're dealing with people's homes, and we need to give them every courtesy.
Absolutely. and I was under the impression we were, but if we're, and I think we probably, do. But if there is an instance, and if this is one of them, then, we want to step back and take a second look.
And I believe we'll know. I believe if they come back and say, no, they don't felt like they were treated fairly, and they come back around, we'll know whether or not we're, in my opinion, whether or not the eminent domain process or the process of right-of-way acquisition was properly followed.
Okay.
Madam Chair, if I could just add, we had a consent agenda item R, which was a similar right-of-way purchase, and just on a fairness issue, these were both at $8 a square foot plus 15%. So the item S is the exact same price as an adjoining property, so it was consistent from that point of view.
Yeah.
Right. I have a bit of a concern that this was signed, and that now we step back and say, oh, well, I question you signing it, when nobody's contacted me basically that signed it.
Right.
I hear hearsay, but I can't go by hearsay, and that's why we're trying to, get to the bottom of all this.
We simply go by when they signed the agreement. We consider it executed on there, and it's just a matter of us bringing it forward to the board. This is not a whole take. This is just 7 feet of their frontage that we need for the 1658th widening.
Yeah.
Okay, well, where do we stand, commissioners? What is do we have a motion here?
Well, I would like to err on the side of conservative on this, and if there's a possibility of somebody feeling like they haven't been treated fairly, I'd like to certainly give them the opportunity. But at the same time, if it's just hearsay, and if they don't feel that way and they want to go ahead and wrap this up, I'm ready to do that too. So it's almost like approval pending them saying yes one more time.
Mr. Ball, do you have anything to add to this?
No, I mean, all I could say is what's in the agenda item, and we did get appraisals. I just, they have signed it, and it's up to the board. I mean, we'll check with these people again. We'll work with legal, with Will's office, and see if we'll check and make sure that these people are happy with what they've signed. That's all I know to do.
And so let's have a motion then that if they're happy, we'll go forward. If not, we'll re-agenda it.
And then to confirm that, in fact, we are using the proper process and protocol.
Well, that we want, I'm sure we're using the proper, but we want explained.
Right. So
that we understand completely. And if there's any little thing we want to adjust, we can do that.
Yeah, I think if we can do that, we could approve this pending their happiness with it, I guess, is the way to put it. If not, then I'd like let's say 2 weeks on the agenda that maybe we could get Will to work with Bob and do a PowerPoint.
Plus handouts.
Yeah, but I mean, so we understand the process and the letters that go out and how clear it is, the explanation.
That was what I was moving for.
All that in the motion I moved.
Second. All those.
You moved it. I thought I was. Oh, that's good. Okay.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any more discussion? Passes 5-0. Thank you very much. And that completes the consent agenda. Is that correct? Good. There are no constitutional officers in governmental agencies. We go to public items, public hearings, consideration of proposed amendments to LDR, Chapter 910, concurrency management system to add school concurrency regulations and update transportation monitoring area of influence reference. Memorandum dated April the 25th, 2008. This is legislative.
Good morning.
Good morning.
This item has no new substance to it with respect to school concurrency. You all have already approved and essentially established the county school concurrency requirements in the interlocal agreement and the public school facilities element, but this would codify school concurrency, put it into our land development regulations section. And in fact, the interlocal agreement was structured to fit in completely with the county's approach to concurrency, and the other municipalities have agreed to pretty much follow suit. So that set the table for this, made it very easy. Essentially, school concurrency will just be one more component of our existing concurrency system and regulations, and the school district staff will function in this respect like just another department when a concurrency application comes in. Traffic will review, engineering will review, and now school district staff will review an application. So there's no new substance to this particular ordinance. The Professional Services Advisory Committee recommended to one that you all adopt these changes. The Planning and Zoning Commission voted 7-0 to recommend that you all adopt these changes. And this is actually the final step for school concurrency. The land development regulation changes have to be adopted by July 1st of this year. And just one other item that I wanted to mention here, and that is that the concurrency aspect here, just the regulations side of things, there's still school planning, obviously, that goes forward. And so whether or not a new residential project is involved with concurrency or an existing lot that is not subject to school concurrency, the impacts are still going to be tracked by the school district staff. The students will be coming from older subdivisions that are past the time of having the test, and the new ones will be coming online. They'll be looking at the impacts of all that together. This is just going to affect new residential projects that have not been approved. The other thing that I wanted to mention is on the last page of the ordinance, page 11, there's a blank there on the effective date, and the effective date should be July 1, 2008. And that would be one change to the ordinance that's in your backup to fill in that effective date, July 1, 2008. And that would be consistent with the way the interlocal agreement is structured, and that's when all the kind of bureaucratic processes will be in place. So staff's recommendation is for you all to approve it with that effective date filled in, and I'd be glad to answer any questions that you might have.
Do we have any questions, commissioners? May I have a motion?
So moved.
It's a public hearing. Did you want to open the public hearing first?
Okay. Thank you. Anyone like to speak to this item? Seeing none, I'll close it.
So moved.
So moved.
Now we're official.
And that was second.
Thank you. Yes, we want to be official for sure. All those in favor?
Aye.
Passes 5-0. Thank you. Our second public hearing, a mining moratorium ordinance extension, memorandum dated May 27, 2008, and this also is legislative.
Commissioners, in January, a 6-month moratorium was imposed on the acceptance of applications and processing applications for mining permits and issuing permits. There are certain exceptions that are carried forward in a proposed ordinance that would extend that moratorium for an additional 6 months to January 10th of 2009. There have been a number of workshops and site visits conducted by the Planning and Zoning Commission up to this point, but there are still several more scheduled, and it's clear that no new mining regulations will be drafted and be able to be advertised for hearings prior to the early July expiration of the existing ordinance. In April, you asked me to begin the process of extending the moratorium. So what you have before you is an ordinance extending it for 6 months. Now, in the event the work was done before then, any ordinance implementing new mining regulations could also terminate the moratorium at an earlier date. We're not allowed by state law to have a moratorium on mining in excess of 12 months, so this gives us the most flexible leeway we could without coming back. This was considered by the Professional Services Advisory Commission, who essentially couldn't come to a consensus. Planning and Zoning recommended by 5-0 to extend the vote. The process for a moratorium is a little more formal than a typical ordinance. It requires 2 hearings before the Board of County Commissioners. This is the first one, and the second one is required to be on a weekday after 5 p.m. unless the board, by a supermajority vote, votes to hold it at a second time. We can hold the hearing no sooner than July 13th because of June 13th because of advertising requirements. But it would be my recommendation that you hold it at the regular meeting on the 17th. When this matter was at a night meeting before the Planning Commission, we had 4 people in the audience who were interested in it, but none of whom spoke to it, so I don't think there's a lot of controversy over extending it. I think we could take care of it at a regular meeting on the 17th, and that's what I'd recommend.
Thank you. At this point, do we have any questions? Will, can I open the public hearing? Anyone like to speak to this item? Seeing none, I close the public hearing.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Just for staff, do we have some dates set now for these last couple of workshops that P&Z needs to be done, and then we have kind of a timetable for when this will be brought back before us so that we'll have this wrapped up before the extension's over?
Yes, there are 2 more workshops, different topics for the P&Z. There will be one in July. We should set the date, hopefully actually today, have the date set today, and it'll be in July. And then the subsequent workshop we would anticipate in August, and probably the P&Z reporting back to you all in early September. If you all can obviously give input at that point and direct for formal amendments, probably go to the PSAC in October, P&Z in November, back to you all in December. That's the way we see it playing out at this point.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any further questions? Okay, thank you, staff. You've worked real hard at this. Appreciate
Move staff recommendation.
Second.
it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Passes 5-0. Public discussion items. Request to speak to Keep Indian River Beautiful regarding Kite Properties to receive award for their stewardship. Good morning. We see you again.
Yes. Melanie Jones, 343 13th Street Southwest, Vero Beach, 32961. Again, my name is Melanie Jones. I'm with Keep Indian River Beautiful. And it goes without saying that your time is valuable, so I thank you for allowing me to come before you today. And we have some additional good news for you all. But let me first start by saying it's all too common that we're made aware of global warming in the news, and as we take time to reevaluate our environmental impacts and carbon footprints, it's equally as important we recognize the positive actions taking place in our own community. And CURB is here today to present a Stewardship Recognition Award to Kite Properties. As an update, Kite Properties is relocating 34 live oak trees ranging from 50 to even 150 years old. And the purpose of relocating these ancient trees is to open space for an 83-room Spring Hill Suites by Marriott located at the northern end of Indian River Boulevard. And some commuters may travel by the property but are unaware that there is a job site or an area being developed. And there's a reason for this oversight of the construction. The Spring Hill Suites by Marriott is nestled off of Indian River Boulevard with old Florida characteristics. And while Kite Properties sees the ancient oaks are safely relocated on the property, they have extended their environmental stewardship by donating 2 plant specimens to McKee Botanical Garden. And for those of us who have been to McKee Botanical Garden, we've had the opportunity to be introduced to our founders of Vero Beach. And for generations, even decades, a visit to McKee for some is a tranquil trip back in time. We can connect with our ancestors who roamed their newly discovered land, surpassing all odds of survival. And from my understanding, McKee was a place that took people back in time only to the 70s or 80s, friends who gathered under the Hall of Giants after a high school football game. For others, McKee is a place of history once threatened by development but saved by individuals in the Indian River Land Trust. We have a reason to recognize Kite Properties' live oak relocation property. You see, the environmental impacts of Kite Properties' project will prove for generations the additional expenses that Kite incurs to relocate the ancient live oaks is a priceless investment in our community and the environment. And beyond the boost in our local economy because of the Spring Hill Suites by Marriott, we can review the environmental benefits of preserving live oaks. And as you can see here, 1 acre of forest absorbs 6 tons of carbon dioxide and 4 tons of oxygen. And this is enough to meet the annual needs of 18 people. Planting of trees means improved water quality, resulting in less runoff and erosion. And this allows more recharging of the groundwater supply. Wooded areas help prevent the transport of sediment and chemicals into streams. And if you plant a tree today on the west side of your home, in 5 years, your energy bills should be 3% less. In 15 years, the savings will be nearly 12%. And I think everyone here who sees the soaring prices of gas and other energy, this could be a significant savings. And of course, trees properly placed around buildings can reduce air conditioning needs by 30%. Therefore, it's my honor to present Kite Properties with the Stewardship Recognition Award. On behalf of Keep Indian River Beautiful, thank you for taking an active role as environmental stewards in preserving 34 ancient live oak trees. Your commitment to the community has proven your appreciation of our irreplaceable natural resources. Your teamwork has provided citizens with a healthier quality of life now and for future generations. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Can we have an introductions, please?
I'm sorry. This is Kelly Kite with Kite Properties and Mike Lohr with Kite Properties as well.
Good to have you this morning.
Madam Chair.
I'd just like to thank Melanie and Keep Indian River Beautiful for recognizing us, and just to let the county know that this is just one of many green initiatives that we're taking in the development of this hotel. And I know the county has already started probably to look at this to some extent, but recognizing and giving incentives to developers for doing more green type developments that help our county and our community, I think would be a good thing for the future of the county.
Great. Yes, Wesley?
Madam Chair, just as an aside, this is well into the project, but even before the project started, I got a lot of calls from the residents that in Fairlane, or at the Fairways, which is the condominiums just to the south of this project, and I would like to compliment the developers. They had open meetings, discussed ideas, was very forthright with the neighbors, and made some improvements to the point. I mean, yeah, they'd rather see it stay in oak trees, but they really did appreciate the time that you took to sit down, explain the program, modify the program, and the future development there, because it truly does affect their quality of life. And I just want to say thanks for doing that in advance. It's really the way things should be done.
And this is the way we want to do business in Indian River County, business friendly and neighborhood friendly. And we thank you for setting a good example.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Just in closing, if I could, as your day presents itself and the news reminds us of our precious environment, natural resources, wildlife habitats, our general health, and future generations facing global warming, you can remember that you have willing citizens, Curb and Kite Properties, who actively work to provide solutions to problems we face in our own backyard. And again, thank you very much for your time and support.
Thank you. Next, we have request to speak from Joseph Grafani regarding the transfer stations. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Joseph Grafani, and my identification is out in the car. My address is on the form that I filled out. It's a matter of public record if anybody needs it. I'm not ashamed that I live at 441 Holly Road, Vero Beach, Florida. But if anybody needs that information, they can get it off the form that I had to fill out. A couple of you, I came here to talk about the transfer station and the privatization thereof, and I'm opposed to it. Before I get into that, I have a few preliminary comments. I'll keep them as brief as possible. A couple of you approached me out in the lobby before the meeting, and I appreciated that. You noticed that I was very cordial, as my congenial personality would dictate, and that nothing out there would bring harm to you or me. However, inside here it's all business, so my comments are, they may be harsh, and they're strictly that of your professional activities, nothing personal involved. As far as the sidewalks are concerned, I'll just make a quick comment about that. I find it almost appalling and annoying that you would take a half an hour to discuss such a mundane issue, an issue that should be covered by your staff, and it's simply an indication of, to me, from my perspective, an indication of the incompetence thereof. These things should have been spelled out, and there should be no need to waste a half an hour of 50 people's time. That's 25 man-hours. Just thought I'd throw that in there so you would understand my perspective of my county government. Excuse me. Anybody, as far as my seemingly disjointed comments, I liked what Dr. Einstein had to say. Everything is relative. And so I wish that people who, and this is a public meeting and other people are watching this, besides the 5 of you, the people who are unable to connect the dots might not accuse me of rambling. Now, the last time I was here, not to get to the issue, the last time I was here, I spoke about the transfer station and the privatization thereof, and I'm opposed to that. I said that I wasn't going to get into the numbers, that this is a people issue. I'm concerned about 20 people. I don't know who they are. I don't know them personally, but I'm concerned about them not being traumatized. Well, it's too late for that. They already are, because I would suspect that they're already in fear of losing their jobs or their hospitalization or perhaps a reduce in pay if they continue on. And I said I wasn't going to get into the numbers, but this morning I am, because I decided that they are relevant. I did a few calculations, didn't need my slide rule, and you don't need yours. It turns out that there are about 40,000 man-hours that are supplied by these 20 employees working 40 hours a week, 40 hours a week, 50 hours a year, 50 weeks a year. So there's 40,000 man-hours that are supplied by these 20 employees. It turns out that if the units are open, these stations, the 5 stations are open 11 hours a day, you need 14,000 roughly. And I happen to be an engineer, a real engineer, so I'm rounding these numbers off. I'm not a statistician or an accountant or a numbers guy. I happen to be, or was at one time, a real engineer. So I'm rounding these numbers off. So there's about 14,000 man-hours that are needed. You multiply the number of stations times the hours per day times the days per week times the weeks per year, you come out to about 14,000. That's roughly 3 times or 1/3, it depends how you look at it. Let's say you have 3 times the man-hours to run these stations if there's one person there during his or her tenure, his or her day's activities. I've gone to one of the stations several times, the one in Winter Beach, and I've only ever seen one person there. I've been there in the morning, in the afternoon, and close to closing time. Well, I'm not making any accusations here, but I wouldn't be surprised if there were some people, somebody's paramour perhaps, that's listed on the payroll in a no-show position. I know that the transfer on Old Dixie has had 2 and maybe 3 people, because I've used that one on a regular basis. So I'm not quite sure as to what your management team is up to. The other thing is that, according to what was printed in the paper, the cost of these transfer stations was $2 million a year. And then it went on to say that about $1 million of that is for a payroll. Well, it turns out that in your budget, which I got a copy of, it turns out that the payroll, it's the way it says here in black and white, and I'm sorry, I don't have enough time in my personal life that I could prepare something to show you, to give you a handout. But it turns out that there are about, the cost, payroll is around $430,000. Now, I don't know if that includes hospitalization or not, but as it turns out, it's about $11 an hour that these people are paid. So it's no big deal. These people are not entry-level Fortune 500 employees hoping to walk away with a $50 million golden parachute at the end of their career, however long it is. And these people are $10 or $11 an hour, as best I can figure out, employees. And I don't know, and I don't want to know, I'm not asking now, I have any question I may make is rhetorical. I don't know how much it costs for these people for their hospitalization. It's not indicated here. I can't get it off these numbers. This is your budget that I'm reading. I give you this information so that you might consider some of the financial factors. How much can you possibly save? I think the paper said, if I'm not mistaken, and I'm almost finished here, I know you're busy, I think the paper said that the whole operation cost $70 million a year. I may be wrong on that, but I think that's what it said. As it turns out, this $400 and some odd $1,000 is about, as a real engineer would say, about 0.5% of the total budget, which means it's, in layman's terms, bubblegum money. And I don't see how your staff and the proposal to privatize this operation and traumatize 20 employees who not only me but other people have said do an excellent job. And pardon me for giving you a specific example, but I recycle cardboard. And any time that I've gone to any of these stations, the employee almost immediately comes out and starts packing the cardboard in the little container, almost as if out of fear. It's almost instantaneous, and I'm amazed at that. So I don't think that these people should be put in jeopardy for such a small amount. And I think that you should be, pardon my harshness, but you should be ashamed of your staff for not being able or lacking the capacity to come up with a better solution if money happens to be tight in your quarters. And I wish you would almost summarily, I've given you good reason, but almost summarily reject this. And you don't have to know these people, but they are human beings. I don't know them all. I've never seen them all, but they are human beings. These people are more important than the few dollars that you're going to save or that you could possibly save by the privatization of this thing. Now, I respect you, and I hope you appreciate that these two appearances are rare. And I hope I don't have to return here to admonish you for allowing the privatization. I have signed up for the next meeting, but if you see my name in print and things go my way and the way of the taxpayers, that I won't return. Good day.
Thank you. Our next item is under Departmental Matters, Emergency Services, Approval of Bell South Special Service Agreement. Memorandum dated May the 27th, 2008.
Full approval. Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Passes 5-0. Good. Office of Management and Budget, Tourist Development Council, 2008-2009 Budget Recommendations. Memorandum dated May 27th, 2008. Do I have Jason coming forward? Thank you, Jason.
Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, Jason Brown, County Budget Director. What you have before you for your consideration today is the allocation of the tourist tax funding, as we do each time this year. At the TDC meeting on May 21st, the agencies all made presentations that they were rated as usual. The rankings came out, and the result of the rankings, Indian River Historical Society received the lowest ranking, and the result of that was that there was no funding made available for the Historical Society. Some of the TDC members were concerned about that and wanted to make an alternate recommendation that all requesters were limited to a 2% increase in funding, and then the rating system would be applied. The result of that was basically a slight reduction in the amount that the Treasure Coast Sports Commission would receive and a negligible impact on Vero Heritage, and then there would be $3,600 roughly for the Historical Society. So there are two alternatives presented to you today. One is following the standard rating process, and the other is the alternative, which limits all the requesters to no more than a 2% increase in light of the economic conditions this year. And staff is recommending alternative 2, limiting all agencies to a 2% increase and then applying the same rating process that's been used for the last several years. That was adopted in I think 2002. Prior to this rating system, there wasn't really a quantitative approach. The TDC meetings, sometimes there was difficulty in allocating the dollars. So this rating system was devised similar to the state rating programs, where there are state grants where you add up the total number of points, the funding's allocated until the money runs out, and then the proposals for grants that fall below the line don't get funded. The ones above the line do get funded, and that's where we are here today. So we're recommending alternative 2, and here if you have any questions.
I chair this meeting because I'm chair of the commission, and this was a 4-hour meeting, and we all tried to be fair in the end and tried to allocate what we could. We didn't want to leave out anyone, and the Sports Authority did come in over budget, whereas several of them did come in under what they had last year. So we felt like this was the best and most equitable way to do this. So I also recommend alternate number 2.
Madam Chair, I move alternate recommendation number 2.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Passes 5-0. Thank you, and thank you, Jason, for coming
Thank you.
home to do all the numbers. Utility services, continuing consulting services, work order number 8 with Bridge Design Associates, Inc. for design of force main relocation on 16th Street Bridge, 74th Avenue, UCP 3079, memorandum dated May 15th, does that say? 2008. It's time for glasses. Good morning.
Good morning. Again, Mike Hotchkiss, Capital Projects Manager, Utilities Department. This is just a continuing services consultant contract for designing some pipe routing around a bridge design. And they were the bridge consultants, so we thought they'd be most appropriate for designing the pipe routing around the bridge.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I move to approve staff recommendation.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Passes 5-0. Approval of bid award for IRC bid number 200804000 SR60. Utility improvements, 8,300 block of State Road 60 and Indian Creek Boulevard, WIP number 471-23536-044649908503, 472-169-000-08503, UCP number 3026, memorandum dated May 7, 2008.
Move approval.
Whatever that is.
Good job, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, I missed one of those numbers. Could you
Yeah, could you
repeat
back
that,
up and say
please?
that again?
Not on your life. May I have a motion?
You have the motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Passes 5-0.
And there's also item J2.
Yeah, J2.
J2.
Yeah, that's what we jumped down one.
It's not as many numbers, though,
Okay,
Madam Chair.
amendment number 6 to work order number 1 of Ecotech Consultants, Inc., memorandum dated May 20th, 2008.
Move approval.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Passes 5-0. Thank you very much. County Attorney's Matters report on Mr. Munsing's request to rescind resolution number 2008-43. Will.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. 2 weeks ago, Mr. Vatunik, appearing on behalf of Mr. Mensing, argued that the County Commission should rescind a resolution which had accepted an implied dedication of a 60-foot strip of right-of-way within an 1888 Brevard County plat of Section 30 of the Fleming Grant. And his argument was primarily that a common law dedication required clear intention of the owner by word, acts to dedicate the land to public use, and that the county must have clear, satisfactory and unequivocal proof of acceptance. Since that time, I've reviewed several legal treatises and cases related to dedication, and I do agree with Mr. Vatunik as to the law. I think in applying the law to the facts of the case, the county can clearly show the intent of the owner to dedicate the 60-foot strip by its act of showing it on the face of the recorded plat as a means of access to the 5-acre tracts lying on either side of the strip. Now, Mr. Vatunik at the last meeting had postulated that because the strips were not identified as streets, they conceivably could have been intended as canals, but given the lay of the land up there above the river, I think the more reasonable interpretation is that it was for ingress and egress by vehicles or horses, however you did it in 1888. The second component, the resolution accepting, is clear, satisfactory, and unequivocal proof of the county's acceptance of the dedication. And I think that as a matter of public policy, providing access to abutting lot owners trumps any interest in Mr. Mensing's claim to title of this nuisance strip. Mr. Mensing's claim is based on a quitclaim deed from the purported grandson of one of 3 of the original owners, but that deed, the quitclaim deed to Mensing, could pass no interest since any reversionary interest was extinguished by state law in the 1870s. And it would be my recommendation to leave the resolution accepting the dedication in place so that this street could be used for access by adjoining lot owners and members of the public. There was a separate issue raised about adverse possession potential, and in reviewing the statutes on real property actions, it's clear to me that Mr. Mensing would have a right to sue, but whether he could overcome some of the further elements necessary to prove adverse possession may be more problematic. For instance, owning the property for 7 years and establishing legal title, it would be difficult to establish legal title based on a quitclaim deed because of that 1970s era statute extinguishing the reversionary interest that he's claiming under. There are other bases for adverse possession when the property's been founded on a written instrument, which would include the quitclaim deed, and possession has been there for 7 years. But for purposes of determining possession, the statute requires protection by a substantial enclosure for the period of the 7 years, and the fence that's generated a lot of the recent controversy has only been there for about the last 5 years, so that claim may not prevail either. There's another basis for adverse possession if the property is cultivated or improved, and that may be the strongest argument that he has, in that there were some portions of the strip to the north of his 5 feet that were occupied by structures. But if that claim would survive, it would only be to that portion immediately north of his and not affect the rights of ingress and egress of any of the other landowners fronting on the 5-acre strip. So while acknowledging that there's merit to the argument that Mr. Vatunik brought forward, and Mr. Mensing certainly has a right to claim under adverse possession. I think under the facts, I would not recommend rescinding. I think the best thing to do is leave the resolution of acceptance in place and move forward. But I believe that Mr. Batunik is here as well.
Thank you. Any questions of Will? Mr. Batunik, would you like to speak?
Yes, please. Good morning. Doug Batunik, Collins Brown Caldwell, representing Mr. Mensing. I guess, Mr. Collins and I disagree on a couple of points, actually. The offer has to be clear and unequivocal, and in this case, all there is for an offer is a plat with blank strips, and that's as equivocal as it gets. And the case law says that undesignated portions of plats are not offered for public. There are private streets in our community, and so not only is this just a canal or a street, it could be a private street. And if there was an offer, clearly it was revoked. If there's an offer, if there's a street on a plat like that, the abutting lot owners own to the middle and fee, and then there's an easement over the top of it, common to all the owners in the subdivision, until there's an offer and an acceptance of that dedication. And in this case, if there was an acceptance, it was only a month ago, 120 years after a blank plat was filed. And since that 120 years, there's been a building built where half of the building is in this strip, and it's been used not by the public for access to go all the way across the Fleming Grant. There are all kinds of structures and fences in between there. Furthermore, Mr. Mensing was at the hearing when the resolution passed and objected vigorously, I would assume, even though I haven't seen the tape of the meeting. You've got to have an offer and acceptance without revocation by the owner in the middle. And even if you want to consider a blank plat to be an unequivocal offer of public dedication, which I don't think you can, and even if you want to consider that the acceptance was proper, clearly somewhere in the middle somebody revoked that offer by putting buildings on there, by fencing it in, by doing those sorts of things, by showing up at the hearing, in fact, and objecting to it. This is a dispute between neighbors, and maybe the county thought that this would be the simplest solution would be just to dedicate this. But in a dedication challenge, the county is the one with the burden that has to show this through not just a preponderance of the evidence, 51%, I think this is the way it goes, but it has to be clear and convincing evidence. Mr. Mensing and his family have considered this strip as a part of their yard. They've actually sold some of the easement rights they think they have on that same strip, but just further to the south of the portion we're talking about today and the part that the resolution deals with. Aside from having a building on the strip that, as far as I know, is in use, and aside from the fear of losing his yard and the value of his house, Mr. Mensing and some of the other neighbors do fear that this could be used by the public for access, and unnecessarily so. For 120 years, public hasn't had access. There's no reason to give it now. Mr. Curie, as far as I understand, purchased easement rights over part of the strip from Mr. Mensing and his family and used that to access his property. So this is not an easement by necessity. This is a plain and simple common law dedication that went awry, I believe. And furthermore, I want to wrap up here with by showing you the plat and a settlement that came out of litigation about I think it was a code enforcement lien. But in this settlement, it specifically excludes the strip that a few years later with the resolution just a month ago the county purported to accept. It's going to be too big for this thing. This is Mr. Mincing's lot here. This is the strip in question. This is the settlement that the county agreed to with Mr. Mincing. I may need to hold it up here so we can see these numbers. It says, any claim the agreement between Mincing and Carey lessened except those portions of parcel 3 as described, bounded by lot 10, 11, all the way to 19. And that's this. That's the strip. The county had a settlement with Mr. Mincing and said, we won't take this strip from you. Will you agree to this settlement? We'll release all of our claims. So I think, and that was important to Mr. Mincing and his son, who had an interest in these lots that he did give away. They didn't want to give away that strip. It was not their intention. So I think it's best for the county to stay out of what amounts to a civil real property dispute between neighbors. If Mr. Carey feels like he needs access and feels like he has a right under the law to seek that in the courts, then that's fine. But otherwise, if the county really needs this for access, I just ask that the county go through the proper process for either negotiating with Mr. Mincing for some kind of deal there, or going through the process of condemnation that you have to go through. I would just hope that at least today we could agree to either table this or reconsider it in the future, or just let the parties go to court, whatever you decide. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Any questions?
Yeah, Mr. Fortunak, could you put that back on the...
Yes, sir. Do you want the agreement here?
No, the plat. I just want a clear understanding of what I have. There are several. How many of these other strips have been dedicated to the county that appear on here?
Many of the litigation that he speaks of related to the North County Conservation Area, and Mr. Mincing claimed title to strips that were within there, was arguing that we had no rights to log or manage the property. At that time, at the beginning of this century, we had some conflicting information from surveyors as to whether the strips did or did not exist, and as a way of settlement and to avoid the cost of expert surveying testimony in court, we offered to purchase the strips within the North County Conservation Area for $5,000, and because the strip in question today lied on the northern boundary, it wasn't of import at that time to the integrity of the North County Conservation Area. So we did not attempt to address and excluded from acquisition that particular strip at that time.
Okay, thank you.
I have one more point that I neglected to mention, but upon taking another look at this, look at all these lots in between these strips. Clearly no access is provided to this one here. It's not a safe assumption to just assume these are definitely roadways for public use that should go all the way across. The bridge over the river, no, I think it's equivocal.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Mr. Collins.
Wesley?
Just, where do we go with this?
Well, I think by accepting by passing the resolution accepting the implied dedication, we've staked the claim to it as a public road. both Mr. Curie and Mr. Mensing have already been to court saying that they have rights in the road, and the judge said, you don't have any clearly established rights, and the impression I got was that the county should address this. And we've had cases in the past in this area of Roseland and other areas where we've accepted by resolution dedication of old platted rights of ways that had not yet been opened up or utilized in order to avoid these problems going forward in the future. And those resolutions have been effective to this point. So I just think this is a way to clear up a claim to title, which I think is specious as to the bulk of the strip. Mr. Mensing may have a better claim to that area immediately adjacent to his lot that he's physically occupied, but those are facts to be argued in a case for adverse possession. I think the better public policy is to say, rather than allow a claim based on a quick claim deed that should have no value, it would be the basis for Mr. Mensing to negotiate and argue for easement payments from all those lot owners. We should claim it on behalf of the public, open up the land and make it useful.
Do you get that, Wesley?
Yeah.
Mr. Mensing, would you like to?
Well, let's start and get a correction. As far as reported grandson, Gene Roddenberry established in court a declaration of beneficiary, I believe it's called, as to the grantor of the property. The property has been fenced and posted since at least 1986, when Carolyn Eggert was on the commission, and we can go back and find where at a commission meeting that issue was addressed by Carolyn Eggert. In regard to, there have been 2 suits over these properties. When the bank foreclosed the property that you bought it from through Oreo, which is a subsidiary of that bank, they sued me over the strips. And at that time, we came to a conclusion and we assigned some of these strips to the bank. One of the strips that was involved in the suit, there was a question that came up after the fact, because it was the strip which was part of and contiguous to the homestead, that Mrs. Mensing should have signed that piece over, and that piece was in fact signed over to the county in the suit. Before the settlement was completed, my stepson, Johnny L. Davis Jr., had a conversation with Alan Plakowitz, your attorney. And these are his words as given to me on the phone. He is in the Marine Corps, currently receiving combat pay. Mr. Plakowitz told him that the county vacated all claims to a 60-foot strip from 129th Street east to the 20-foot strip, which is the north end of Lot 19 AA Barry's, and that the county must reopen that road strip as part of the settlement. In fact, you had that strip closed, and you did open it as part of the settlement. Mrs. Mensing also heard the same thing and was told the county would have to buy the 60-foot strip should they want them in the future. The county denied access to the denied need of access to the conservation areas at the time of the settlement. The Mensings, the Semblers, and the Holtzclaws held the property in adverse possession since the hatchery building was placed on the tax rolls in 1964.
Can I ask a question about the adverse possession with that, Mr. Mensing?
Beg your pardon?
I wasn't aware on the adverse possession that you could have adverse possession on government-owned or public property.
Right. Well, our argument is that it was never properly offered for dedication. If it was revoked. And when something is not, let's say it wasn't accepted. Let's say that before the resolution, when there's no doubt it wasn't accepted yet, possibly offered, then you've got strips of land and abutting lot owners owned to the middle of the street in fee simple, as on, I had another case that dealt with Flora Road. Flora Road is a private street. all of those lot owners own to the middle of that street, and each one of them have an easement for right-of-way over that street. But the fee simple, the ownership of that land is, and could it go back to them? I don't know, maybe everybody stops using the road for so long that it's abandoned, then it reverts back to them in fee simple without the easement rights. But that's the answer to that.
If the county makes this the 60-foot strip of public road, expect my land to be annexed into the city and add to the industrial development, and you can take the blame for what additionally happens to Roseland. I will commit, if this is not done, that the property will remain ag or only be changed to Rose 4 when the county warrants that there is no takeover by them of the 60-foot strip for public use. The only person who wants the strip is Mr. Carey. Mrs. Seibert, Ralph Holly, and James Maxwell, who have property abutting or contiguous to or nearby, do not want a public road running through there. The connecting of 129th Street to 130th Street was rejected by Mr. Carey in the past. The county, about 4 years ago, was working on a program to pave it, to pave 130th Street. If Mr. Carey would give up his state-given right to use 129th Street as access to his industrial property. Mr. Carey is being vindictive because he has problems with code enforcement over buildings that he built that you have been dealing with for over 2 years. He's put a second floor in a building, extended it by 15 feet in the Rose 4 district. Mr. Wheeler, you were on this commission. When he answered the commission, you understand, Mr. Carey, because we repealed the commercial portion of Rose 4, you cannot modify or expand your buildings. He's a licensed contractor. He lied to the commission. He has done it, and your code enforcement board has done literally nothing about it. I beg that you at least allow Mr. Collins, Mr. Vatunik to sit down and go over all of the issues and freeze this item until that's done, to save us from the expense of going to court. That's where we're headed.
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
I'm ready to go to court.
I guess the question there is, if we prevail, will they have to pay our costs, or are we going to be wasting taxpayer money?
We always bear our own costs.
Who's suing who?
Well, that's a question, too.
I mean, yeah, who would be the plaintiff in this instance?
I'd be inclined to let Mr. Mensing sue and defend our rights. And we would have the burden of proof in that matter, but I think we could show it substantially.
And so you don't think that any more meetings would be productive for any more?
No, I don't. This has been going on for so many years. In so many forums, either the sheriff's office, the county commission, the courts, that I think some resolution needs to be had.
Madam Chair, can
Well, why would you want to go to court at all? Let Mr. Carey sue Mr. Mensing. Just stay out of it. It's a civil, real property dispute. If the county really wants the land, buy it from Mr. Mensing. But the county shouldn't be in the business of solving neighbors' real property disputes. That's a circuit court matter.
Mr. Fletcher?
Will, is that the case, or should we be involved?
I think we should, because both Mr. Carey and Mr. Mensing repeatedly show up at the sheriff's office, at my office, week after week, year after year, arguing points, making demands, and I think it needs to be resolved finally somehow.
Well, I mean, that's
what is your recommendation, Will?
That we not rescind the resolution, that we've already accepted this right away by resolution.
Do I have a motion to that effect?
I think we just take no action. The resolution's been voted and approved, and it stands. If we want to rescind it, we would take action, but at this point, the resolution is in place, and we can just not take any action and move forward on the agenda.
Right, I understand that, and I was wondering if we wanted to take action. That's the question. So there is no motion? Mr. Wheeler?
Do we have a use for this property?
There's the potential to connect 129th Avenue to 130th Avenue, which is a paved road. It involves another 5-acre tract to the west of Mensing's. Currently, we only have a 20-foot right-of-way from the Mensing tract to 130th Avenue, but it's possible that could be expanded to a normal 60-foot right-of-way, and some industrial traffic could, in fact, get out to the paved road of 130th.
And that's my question. I mean, if we're involved in this, there ought to be some benefit to the public. And you're saying there is potential benefit for future roads? But are they all 5-acre tracts there, and then we got the conservation area in there?
Yes, it's all 5-acre tracts to the south of the strip that we're talking about. There's some smaller lots to the north. Everything to the south is in the conservation area.
The 5-acre parcel, there's some that's owned industrial, though, right?
Excuse me, you have the issue, the 20-foot strip. In order to widen it, you have to fill wetlands. It's in the conservation area where you're under contract about even closing 130th Street permanently. And to widen that strip to get your 60-foot width is a major issue that you have to overcome.
Yes, would you like to speak?
Yes, ma'am. My thing's here, sorry.
My name is C.N. Carey. I'm one of the involved parties, obviously. I've been called everything but... Anyway, those are other issues for another day. The issue today that was recently brought up just a moment ago was the 20-foot strip, causing that to be a narrow roadway. At a recent TRC meeting, which Roland DeBlois was at, excuse me, we addressed the possibility of opening that up. The comment from Roland at that meeting was, we will not abandon a portion of 130th Street any further north than what would line up with that 60-foot strip. The additional 40-foot to be removed from the conserve and filled. Comment was that can be done under a perimeter fill, therefore making a viable 60-foot strip all the way through when it is needed. When it is needed is under an emergency situation. An emergency situation with a strip that is closed off and not available is not doable at the time of an emergency. Therefore, this connect between 129th and 130th is in the best public interest. Should, for example, the power line be damaged and fall down on 129th Street, those people who live on 129th Street would, I'm sure, be desirous of being able to get to their residences without undue burden by not having access, by that line being down. What other mishaps might befall 130th Street, I don't know, but normally within a community, if there's an opportunity to connect streets and provide access for whatever reason, fire, ambulance, it's generally considered in the best public interest. As far as the history of this thing, when we go back and look at law, though I am not an attorney, one of the little bits and pieces in the law says that if any portion of a street or any street has been maintained or accepted within a plat, all streets are accepted. This is something we've dug up, researched, that hasn't been brought up, but I believe you'll find that that's the case. So as far as recently accepted, it is a formality. It's been done. We thank the Commission for that. But these streets have been in place for a long time. At the time of the first maintenance and acceptance of the first piece of street in that plat, that's acceptance of all of them, according to what I've read. As far as fee simple to the center of the roadway, those lots were sold as 5-acre lots all of them. None of those 60-foot strips came from any of those 5-acre lots. The subsequent streets that run north-south did in fact have a portion of each of those lots removed to produce the street. In that light, yes, you have fee simple to the center of the street. But on the original platting, with those 60-foot strips, I don't believe that's the case. They existed unto themselves. At the first sale of this property, A.A. Berry's, none of those streets were offered for sale, nor were they transferred, only the lots. So it locks the streets in as being a street, and it was never tied to ownership of any of the lots. I hope that's enlightened you a little bit. If you have any further questions as to where these things came from and went, I do have a rather extensive background in this thing, just for the reason that we're here today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, if I don't hear a motion, then we'll move it on. Okay, thank you, Will.
Take a break.
Okay, we'll take a 10-minute break. Thank you.
He was mad, boy. He called me. Yeah, I wouldn't return his call.
Almost done.
Huh?
Okay, can we come back to order, please? Thank you. The next item of business is county commission items, and I have an item under mine, task force. We met with Piper the other day for a fantastic announcement of Piper staying, and we're grateful for that, and we've worked long and hard for over a year to get that accomplished. And with that energy and that motivation, I want to seize the moment and the opportunity to open up this Indian River County, our great county, to business-friendly atmosphere. We are here to do business. We want that message sent loud and clear. We would like to have aviation, avionics businesses come to Indian River County. We're actively seeking them. I have had tremendous support from the community since I put this on the agenda and talked about business-friendly. I want to cooperate and collaborate with the chamber. That's their task of doing economic development. I have had our representative, Ralph Popple, also talk to me, and Ralph is here, and so is the chamber. I would like to invite them both to the podium to help send this off. And I think that it is in their backyard that we ought to do this and have a report back within 30, 60, 90 days as the strategy, how we're going to work on this, and we're behind you 100%. And from that, I would open it up to Ralph, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Commission, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Also, good morning to the Chamber. I really want to echo some of what Madam Chair just said. I want to thank each one of you personally. I have already, hopefully, and Joe Baird for all the work that was put into maintaining Piper and setting a precedence for the future, I think, for Indian River County. I think that's certainly a great step. We're happy that Mr. Bass and his company elected to do this, so that's wonderful. Now, where do we go from here? I think, we have different functions in our life, and I look at mine as playing a part of trying to help sometimes in the back while somebody else does their job, and allow them to do their job because that's what they do, and they're good at it. So I feel like if we take and send a message that we're open for business, that we would like good, clean, light industry in our county, and we'd like our county to grow in the proper direction. And after all, we're all talking about budgets, and I notice that the county is saying right now, and I know there's some talk about whether it's 7.1% down, but folks, in the last 2 years, the state's been down almost 10%. So this is, we don't always agree with the press, but this is one time that the press really did help get the word out and get the word out properly. I think that there was definitely a shortfall. Well, how do we correct these shortfalls? We correct the shortfalls by being proactive and bringing industry into our communities and trying to create jobs and job opportunities. And this also gives us a bigger and broader tax base. If we allow the chamber to do their job, and then we do our job as the cities, the county, and the state to do their job to work with them, the teamwork, as just been proven to us, really does pay off. And I would hope that that's exactly where we can be, Madam Chair, we can, and commissioners, that we can actually take this and move forward with it with a positive attitude. And I think it'd be great if Economic Development Council can bring people in, the chamber can bring people in, and they can come over and say, look, this is who we are. Bring them over to the county office complex here and introduce them to the commission and to the chair at that time and say, look, and they find it, this is one team. You're doing a good job. Let's keep that up, and I will do whatever I can to help you all in this endeavor. But I live in this community, and I really love it here, and I appreciate what we have. But folks, we do need jobs. We need job opportunities, and we need to grow in the right, proper direction. So we certainly need to be working strong toward that. So whatever I can do, Chairman, I will do whatever I can to help out in that respect.
Thank you. Well, the task and the marching orders are, we're open for business. We're business friendly. We want good, light, as you say, clean business, aviation, avionics business here, and that's marching orders. And we want some results.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Yeah, I just like, I would assume that a lot of this is being done now by the Chamber and with our Economic Development Commission. Also, we've got the hospital with a new heart unit. I know there's been some work looking at support type businesses there. And also professional businesses, and some of them already have their local home offices in our county. And, Piper's been here 50 years, and I know there's support. I know they did Cleveland Brakes over there, I think, and some others that have done that. But I think it's a good idea. But I would assume that, with the history we've had with Piper, and them being a resident of this county for 50 years, that and the fact that what the Chamber's been doing, that we're already doing that, I would hope.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
I'd like to kind of just add a little bit of twist to this. It's probably not that we're not already doing it. It's that we have a tremendous opportunity now to capitalize on some momentum. And I think it's important for this momentum not to stop. And in fact, really where I would like us to focus some efforts as a county, because like you were saying, like you said, the chamber, and let them, work as our economic arm. But where I would like for us to start to focus as a county is to start anticipating the Piper plan whenever they come in for their plan expansion. Start anticipating and strategizing on the moves that we need to have. As a commissioner, I feel like we've done this in the past by having concurrency on 43rd Avenue and State Road 60. Had we not made those decisions, those correct decisions back then, we wouldn't be able to expand Piper. We would not be able to have IRCC expand their campuses. So that was a strategic plan that we did a long time ago. But now, I would almost like for us to have the goal of getting their permitting done in 30 days. And if that's going to bode better for anything that this county can do for Piper to stand up and say, you know what, this has been amazing. Indian River County, when we got ready to expand our plant, had our permits ready, and we were able to move forward in 30 days. You can't buy that. You can't buy that whenever you have an industry like Piper's talking about a community or a county being able to work with economic development like that. And that's something that I think that we ought to try to anticipate in advance and to capitalize on. And
that should be part of our strategic plan.
Absolutely.
And we ought to have a strategic plan, and we ought to say, this is how we do business here.
Yep.
And we can wrap this up within, if it's 30 days or whatever, and everybody knows, bing, 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 bing. This is what happens and how you do it. The process is there, and we need to advertise that loud and clear, and we need to take that as a goal.
And when we do it, not if we do it, but when we do it, we won't need to advertise it. It'll be on the street. They'll know. The industry will know that we're serious about it, and we have a plan to address the concerns as permitting as we have more businesses.
Well, I think that this conversation that we're having right now is wonderful. It's turning a new leaf over. I've never had this conversation, and I don't think this conversation has ever been in this county before, like we are talking now. And we mean it. We're serious, and we'll go from there.
Madam Chair, if I could just say that all of you are right. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel. We're just trying to make it roll a little smoother. Mm-hmm. I think that's what we have here, and in doing so, there's going to be a lot of accomplishments. And I think, Gary, that's where we're headed, and Wesley, you hit it straight on. That's exactly where we are. And I worked for a man when I was very young that used to tell me, "I don't care what you're doing. There's a better way to do it. Find it." He did not tell me what it was. He said, "Find it." So we always have to keep looking to see what we can do to improve. So, but you're all right on target with that.
You're absolutely right on target. We have to capitalize and jump on this momentum as we have it now, this favorable response. And a recent conversation with Jim Bass, who said that he would like to offer some of his experiences and how the trials and tribulations over this past year have affected his decision, and he would like to bring that forward to, I'm not speaking for him, but speaking about that conversation. And he said he's perfectly willing and desiring to help the government and help our chamber to ensure that we may have other businesses enshrouded about this to place us further on the map.
I'm Penny Chandler. I'm with the Indian River County Chamber of Commerce. I echo what all of you have shared just now. It's been well over a decade since there's been a real open discussion, like you said, Commissioner Bowden. And I can remember Commissioner Carolyn Eggert, second time her name comes up today, talking about these same things when she sat in the same chair. I've had discussions with a couple of the commissioners over the past week about the importance of teamwork. And as it was proven with the Piper announcement last week, I think with teamwork we can do much, much more together. And, it's been proven, and in a very positive way. One of the things that was offered last week at that announcement, as you recall, and Commissioner Fleischer just made mention of that, is that the CEO, Jim Bass, stood up and said, "I will help you. I will help you to recruit new businesses to Indian River County." And that's something that we have not heard before from any of the CEOs. And I think we need to capitalize on what we've got going right now, working together as a group, it's going to demonstrate great things for our county. It wasn't that long ago, probably 6-8 weeks ago, that a well-known economist in Florida took some really nasty shots at Indian River County and said that Indian River County was not a player because of, there wasn't an ease in doing business. And I think that what you're bringing forward today and what your comments are this morning demonstrate that Indian River County is open for business. And I thank you for being part of the team. It's great to hear. We really appreciate anything that you all can do to work with us and to make economic development work for Indian River County, to create more jobs and create a better tax base for the county. Thanks.
Thank you. I see a couple of people in the audience that would like to speak. Yes.
My name is Michael Maggiano, and I'm not Shanny Irish. I'm Italian. But I've got a broad background that I'd like to speak about briefly. It would take too long. But anyhow, what you're up to, I think, is great. I think it needs to go a little further. I always use the analogy that don't put all your eggs in one basket. And I think Florida needs to start looking at that in real strict sense. Because I see things on the horizon that Florida's going to have problems if they don't start looking at, find ways to help the tax base and bring jobs into the area. A lot of the jobs are leaving the country. We have to bring them back in here. Even if it's not from outside the country, we have to bring them back in here by good approach to bringing various types of business. And my background is aircraft and aerospace and related. I've spent time with Minneapolis Honeywell, with Sperry. I've spent time with Stanley Aviation. I've spent time with Mitsubishi Aircraft International. So I have a very broad base in the aircraft and aerospace related industries. I've even been involved in solid rocket motors. And there aren't too many people like myself that have been in these areas. I have other avenues too that are not related to the industry, but I consider them assist because my mental background is very broad, and I look at a whole picture. I don't look at it from tunnel vision. And that's what we have to start thinking about. And I'm in total favor of a task force. My only thought would be if Florida has never had a task force, I would suggest that you make it a pilot program rather than just a gangbusters going task force. Make it a pilot program, because it's better to start out that way than to go full force into it without creating some kind of systemic approach to the situation.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Yes.
Yep, Madam Chair, thank you. First, I just want to applaud you for your support for increasing the aviation business at the airport. I know it's always been controversial, and somebody at Piper's, last week said, they love the noise of airplanes. So I think it's good that we are committing to increasing our aviation business. A couple of things, just so everybody knows, the Chamber and the Economic Development Council and Helene Castleton is doing a lot of the things that we're kind of kicking around here. Light industry is on our targeted list that we recruit. We do have incentives in place. The airport zone is part of our enterprise zone. So a lot of these things are in place. But as the liaison to the Economic Development Council, the one thing I hear the most is the failures or problems we've had in the permitting process that Commissioner Davis referred to. We've had a lot of successes, but it's kind of like regular news. good news doesn't sell. You always hear about the failures and the bad news. So I think one thing we do need to do is to promote the wins we have, the successes, and get that word out. The Economic Development Division, which is the Chamber's private committee, recently had a presentation by Keith Phelan from Kimberly Horn, and he was discussing issues with permitting. And two big things came out. One is, because they do all of Florida and international, he said, compared to the rest of the state, Indian River County and their staff is pretty good to deal with. And he said, compared to the other counties that they deal with, Indian River County does a pretty good job, and I thought that was important to get out. And secondly, he said that the biggest holdup is not with the local permitting, but getting the St. John's permits and from the state agencies. And Ralph, that's where we're going to need your help, is getting things moving on those state agencies and the water management districts. Keith said that's their biggest delay, is getting their stormwater permits and going through St. John's. So we can certainly improve on the county side. I'm not saying we're perfect, but I think we do have a good staff, and we make sure good projects come to fruition. One of the things I'm trying to do to help overcome that issue is Helene and I are going out on a monthly basis to meet with a couple local manufacturers. We're listening to them, see where their concerns are. Recently, we met with a company who they were talking about future expansion plans. They had heard all this bad news about how much it's going to cost them, impact fees and all the parking and all these issues they're going to have to deal with. And to help alleviate that, I have now set up a meeting with myself, the manufacturer, and Bob Keating, the Community Development Director, to go through and Wesley, this is kind of what you're talking about, a hypothetical expansion project. So now the owner can come in, we'll walk through it, tell him exactly what he needs to do, what it's going to cost him, so he has a clear vision. So when he is ready to expand, he's kind of got all his ducks in a row. He knows what to expect, and it can hopefully move forward. And we get involved right at the top. So I've made that commitment to the business partners out there that I'm available to call me. I'm willing to get engaged and help move these through. But I think it's more that we just need to promote the news that we are business friendly. We do want to expand the aviation and other industries and get the good word out. But I know Helene and the Chamber, they've been working on a lot of this. It may not be as visible, but it is going on, and they are working on it.
And I understand that too, but want to ratchet it up to a degree that we can seize the moment and seize the opportunity and be out there.
And I understand that. Let me just remind you that 2 months ago we cut the funding to the EDC by 25%. And next month, if we come up to the budget, if we really want to seize this and spread the word, we may want to consider putting some money back in there to get this news out in different trade publications, or it's going to take a little money to promote this. We just can't sit here and say, hey, it's going to work when we're cutting the budget 25%,
right.
But we need to.
And that's why we're bringing this forward right now.
Okay.
The plan, the strategic plan is, and trying to get a consensus here that this is front and center of what we want to do. And make no mistake, the other thing I want to bring forward that you mentioned is the collaborative effort that we need to have with St. John's and South Water, because we're in between both of them, and every other state and national organization that we need to be in collaborative with. We don't need our head in the sand anymore, and we want to be out there. We want to be number one. When they come looking, let's be on the top 1, 2, 3.
Madam Chair, in addition to that, before we just let this die or let I would like for somebody to come back. I'd like a time certain right now. We'd like something to come back before us.
Right, and that's
before we end this conversation.
That's what we're coming to consensus about, and everybody's starting to realize that this is the marching orders. Joe?
Well, actually, I talked with Steve from Piper Constant about any new project he's got. He calls, we go over it. He tells me when he's going to bring in the plans, what we're going to do. We've been working on that. Don't forget that, like like Commissioner Bryan stated, you know, a lot of time, we're the clearinghouse, and we went over with Representative Popple. We get the clearinghouse for the permits. We have to wait for DEP, Department of Environmental Protection. We have to wait for St. John's. We have to look at all those things. So sometimes it's done in-house. Now, we do have a good relationship with all of those agencies, and I think that's important, is to keep that going. Piper always does, Steve calls me when they're getting ready to submit something. I don't know how to say it delicately. They don't always want everyone to, you know, they want to submit. And, you know, sometimes they prefer to work on things quietly and get them through. You got to keep that in mind too, but they have my cell number. They call me constant. And we have a real good relationship with them.
Well, that's great, but this is a policy board, and we need to set a policy loud and clear, I do believe, that we are open for business. We are not doing business as usual. This is a new leaf we're turning over, and we're going to be aggressive and assertive, whether it takes, whatever it takes.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I would really, I'd like to stick by some of the conversation that we had earlier as far as trying to have it as a goal from, you know, a 30-day permitting policy for those that expanding businesses or relocating businesses. And even if we fall short of that, it's still a good goal to have and try to get it done. And I know we don't have anything like that right now.
No.
That I know of. And I've had the opportunity to work with MDI up in Sebastian. I've had some conversations with Microtech Knives about relocating back here, and there's some, and not all it's the county's fault, but I think it's very appropriate for us to be able to tell a business what they need to do to make things happen versus whenever they come to us with a plan, tell them what they've done wrong. If we tell them what they need to do, it's a lot easier to pull that chain than it is to push it.
Say that again.
It's a lot easier to pull that chain than it is to push it.
It worked the first time.
Yeah.
Well, good. I'm glad everybody's in agreement. And I would like to, I'm in the process, excuse me, right now of setting up a chairman's advisory committee that will advise me on different processes and procedures, and CEOs have contacted me, and we're moving forward. If we're all in agreement then that a task force would be the chamber, and they could come back and talk to us in a short period of time to see where we are, or we want a task force separate.
I think the chamber, as far as the recruiting side of it, could very well be. I mean, when we're there, but I'm going to go back to the situation that if it hadn't been for Piper having the working relationship, perhaps with our county administrator, somebody off the street, what would they do? Or somebody coming in, what would they do? They don't have his cell phone number. We need something in place so that it's not just
a process.
Exactly.
The mic's off. We do have that process, and most industries, if they go to the chamber brings them in, and we meet right away with look over their plans. That's what we do presently. The chamber knows all of our people. When a business comes in and they go through the process, usually a lot of times when they're in their initial stages, they want to meet quietly because until they make their decision, and we work with them on that. But
I guess what we're saying is that we want to change our image. Our image has not been a friendly image, and we want to send the message loud and clear immediately.
And even if it means publicizing that process just a little bit or something.
Okay.
And I'd like it again. I'm not going to be satisfied until I get a date certain. In 30 days when we come back to know what is the plan that we're going to do with Piper, even if it's just to bring me up to speed.
Oh, I think you can set that goal. That's not a hard goal to set at all for 30 days.
No, it's just doing it.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to talk around in circles and walk out of here feeling good. I want some action.
Penny?
I think it was said, or something was said earlier about identifying certain types. Is that what I'm hearing that you are looking for? You want, I know right now the evaluation of the economic development element is going on, and in there are aviation, avionics as a targeted industry. Are you looking to focus more in on that? Do you want those, the team of people like from EDC to look at that and come back
Yes,
see people to come back to you.
That would be important, and including in that element also would be the process of going through permitting in a short period of time, if you can pull that together, and the other part of the water management area.
And we'll also meet with I think we have to meet with the other cities too, because if it's within a city, they have a different permitting process within their city. We need to also maybe get with them and
have it unified.
Have it all. I'll do that. I mean, that's not a problem. But we need to meet with if it's in the city or if it's they have their own different processes. We're going to meet, make sure we understand them, make sure the industry, we can work with the chamber on that.
I think that we've just never had a plan. It's just been sort of, we'll try to do it and hit and miss, but let's get down and see what the plan is. Let's get with the like you say, municipalities, the 30-day part.
30-day permit turnaround.
The county's Economic Development Council has representatives from each of the municipalities. If I'm not mistaken, I believe each one is represented there. I know for sure, Sebastian, we have Indian River Shores. I'm pretty sure it's each one of them. And since they're the ones who are reviewing, maybe it would be easy at that next meeting. I'm not sure exactly what the date of it is, but maybe it would be something to have this portion of this meeting played at that meeting so that they can see your discussion and be able to move forward in creating something that can be brought back to you. I agree with what you're saying. I think there needs to be some kind of date or some kind of set parameters.
30 days?
Yeah, we need to put this in double time and get on this before summer's over.
Let me just add here a little bit, because I have been hearing this and gone through this with Bob and Stan. When somebody submits a site plan, okay, in 14 days, we have a technical review committee, and that means every department head has reviewed the site plan, and they provide written comments to the applicant, okay? Now, once they've done that, it's out of our hands. Their engineer could take months to get around addressing those issues, and that's totally out of our control, okay? When they come back, and Joe, help me here, I think it's usually if they come back with the request for information, staff turns around in a couple, 3 days, and then it goes back in their court again, where we don't have control. I mean, most of the time when I've done forensic timelines on these complaints, our staff has turned them around pretty darn quick. Now, there are some other issues and problems that we can address, but a lot of the time delay is out of our control, that our staff
I understand that.
does a good job. So it's almost impossible to say you're going to come in with a site plan and get all your permits in 30 days. It's just not going to happen.
No, but if you want it, we didn't say that either. If you want it fast-tracked, this is the way to do it. And there ought to be a fast-track method.
And we have that in place.
And, well, this is where I envision this going, Commissioner O'Brien, is I understand whenever you come in with your site plan, you're dealing with the other agencies and all that. What I'm talking about is whenever you pay your impact fees, and then basically what that does, that pulls in the county inspectors, and that's whenever it's no longer necessarily the design, it's just doing it correctly. And to be able to turn around that when you pay your impact fees, that's whenever your building permit is issued. Not all the other the site plan stuff that you're talking about. That is out of our control. But the turnaround time and the issue that I had that I've seen firsthand, and it wasn't all the county's fault. You are right. There was some other issues, but it was dealing up there with MDI. And trying to keep them from relocating to Vietnam. And we were successful in keeping those 200 jobs. But the significance of it is it was a lot of he said, she said, which is very counterproductive, and it was a lot of common sense, it seemed like, as far as, to me, but there was also some state code that had to be interpreted by our planning department. We got it done. But we got it done basically by playing catch-up and not necessarily staying ahead of the curve on it. And that's really where I would like to try to be with that, is if we have to, when we have a large employer of some kind coming in there, I'm not opposed to setting the employees in Piper. And that way, as soon as there's an inspection, they're able to get it done. They don't have to call and wait 3 days or 2 days or a 24-hour and say, I'll be there between noon and 5. There's got to be a better way of getting this done and turning it around. And I'm not being critical of our building department. I'm just saying there's got to be a better way systemically from both sides, from their engineer side, from the building permit, from the time they sign their impact fee check and move forward.
Ralph?
Madam Chair, each one of y'all made some great points, and I certainly appreciate you and I talking. You give me a call, and I think you're heading in the right direction. But Chair said something is very important. She said that we need to change our image. We can fine-tune all this other once everybody gets the message that the image has changed, that the door is open, that we're doing business. These things can fall into place and be fine-tuned, I feel like. And I'll certainly work, as I said, with you from state level and locally as a citizen and as a legislator to try and help overcome some of the things that Commissioner O'Brien brought up, and some of the, because these are big issues sometimes, and we need to work there. But I think the number one is to do exactly what we've been sort of piecemealing out, but do it as a group. I mean, this is a united front here, and send a message, and it's the right thing at the right time. And I just want to thank you, Madam Chair, and the Commission for looking at this thing positively, and let's move ahead. I think, you know, the Chamber's going to be delighted that they can feel as though, you know, we're all part of the same group. And I just, you're going to see a lot of great things come from this. So thank you for bringing this up.
When's it coming back?
Yeah, we're still talking it.
Madam Chairman, Charlie Wilson, 1057 6th Avenue. Two quick things. One is I want to tell you that I've seen what can be done when we all work together. I can tell you from experience that the staff has done it, just moved mountains to move things when they need to. They're absolutely willing to be helpful. They are the easiest staff to work with that I do, looking at a number of counties. However, you are right. As Representative Popple said, there's always a way to do things better, and many of you have mentioned that already. The Chamber of Commerce has done an excellent job in economic development, and certainly play a huge role along with the cities. Administrator Baird is also correct that sometimes the problem is when you cross jurisdictions. You have more difficulty when you're crossing into city jurisdiction and the county trying to get along with St. John's, with the state, et cetera, et cetera. My only suggestion, the only reason I rise to add to this is that perhaps when you're putting this group together, you may want to think about sometimes things can be done when you see them through new eyes. And sometimes the people that you're talking about, like the new CEOs, retired CEOs, somebody from Piper, that perhaps someone needs to look at this independently with a perhaps different view. And so what I might want to suggest is that you may want to think about appointing some people yourselves that may be looking at it from a completely different way. One example might be someone might suggest, it sounds to me like the hospitality industry solved this a long time ago, and that is that they have an ombudsman. When instead of it being assigned to a department, it is assigned to a single person. Because that single person, the public, the person's in business doesn't know that John has to see this next week and that it has to be signed by Sam first, but your staff member does. And so an ombudsman that is directed on specific industries as they walk these things through the system might be able to be helpful. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
Joseph Paladin, Black Swan Consulting. I would agree with part of what Mr. Wilson just said. I think that if we had somebody maybe seeing as how the building department is slowed down, we're looking at some layoffs, maybe we could have a person that would be assigned to that particular permit. So at any day, any time, that CEO or whoever represents that CEO could call the county and talk to that person and say, where is my permit today? And that person would know where it was instead of having to go through 4 or 5 or 6 phone calls. You'd probably wind up saving the county some time and money in turn. And secondly, addressing Mr. O'Brien's statement about it's not all our fault, he's exactly right. But one of the things we could try and do as the county and the staff is that when we return those comments, and those comments are answered by our engineers, which would be our responsibility to expedite that, not have the county come back with 12 more items after the first round of events. Let's try and get it all done the first time, and then we'll address those items and then bring it back to the county and not go back 3, 4, 5 times. That would be my suggestion.
And, Madam, and I guess we'll wrap this up, but I would like something back, again, with a date certain, and the ombudsman that you're talking about. I would rather it be our county administrator, somebody answers directly to this board.
We already have one, and we've settled at see, a lot of this, at the economic development's already discussed. We already have one, and it's Stan Bowling. And a lot of this, I think these are great ideas, but we also don't want to fragment ourselves. I think that we should take all these ideas back to the committee, which is the Economic Development Committee, and discuss it there, because we can't be going on 2 different paths. That just won't work. And that is the committee that we need to take all these ideas and have all these discussions, because that's why that committee was set up. And I
understand that completely, and that's why we're all here discussing this. And we do need a date certain, 30 days. Let us know where you are in 30 days. And we need to talk amongst ourselves up here and give the marching orders, and then you're responsible.
And I think part of also being positive, working as a team, not critical of every agency. I think and every city. I think that's one of the things that we maybe done incorrectly, is we need to have a positive teamwork and not be critical. And I think that'll go a long ways, and maybe the paper could help too.
Well, we want to take all the politics out of this.
That wasn't being critical, was it?
We want to take
Henry.
We want to take all the politics out of this. We want to do this for this community, and we want to get it done immediately. This is top priority.
Madam Chair, may I just make a suggestion to help move this along, as Commissioner Davis is looking for something time certain. I think we do have kind of a short-term and a long-term issue here, though. Short-term, and when we deal with the EDC and these other, remember, these are sunshine committees that, have to be properly noticed and things like that. So we can't just have them meet for the next 30 days solid. But I would think short-term, we could ask EDC to come back with an ad program highlighting the Piper decision that we can send to the different trade magazines in aviation, avionics, maybe budget to attend a couple of the big shows where we can have somebody there to talk to people. And that part of it is to help spread the word that we're business friendly. Piper made the decision, and I think that they can probably throw together in 30 days and come back to us with something. Secondly, I think we want to go to the builder and developer community, and maybe it's an anonymous survey, so there's no fear of retribution, but ask those guys for suggestions on how to improve the permitting process.
Very good.
And because they're the ones that deal with it more than anybody, and if they are willing to send these back anonymously, we don't want a name or a project, just fill in some questions, and then we can take that information and start reevaluating our permitting plan. I think that's going to take a little bit longer.
Right.
But then we can take both of those and bring them together as part of a strategic plan for this. But so that'd be my idea. If we want something back soon, I think an ad program to highlight the Piper decision and how we're going to promote that. And then we get the builders and developers to give us their comments, and then we can start putting something together from there.
And I would also, there's nothing wrong with Stan being our point person on this, but there's Bob Keating is Stan's boss. And then, of course, Bob Keating's boss is Joe Baird. And as a commissioner, there's only one person
that we deal with
on the staff, on the administration side, and then one on the law side. And I would almost, since they're already doing that, I would almost like to put this right on the county administrator's lap and have him be our point person on this, because that's something that we can give direction to if we hear something wrong. I can't give direction to Stan,
right.
Nor Bob, nor Mike Zito, but I can, especially with 3 votes of the commission to the county administrator.
And I will say that the minute Stan gets a call, he calls me immediately, and so do all my department heads.
I would hope so.
We've discussed this at staff meeting also. You might have a walk-in that people don't realize are coming into the community. My utility department say, look, I've got this guy looking at needs this much water for a plant. So as we're aware of it. So we keep that open dialogue in the department head meetings, and they call immediately if they see an industry walk in that we weren't aware of.
I think that we need to be on the cusp, too, of being informed And I would hope you would do that, and that in 30 days, we will have something back from you and from the Chamber.
And I like the idea of the survey, Commissioner. I did.
Okay.
I like that. I don't know whether we need a vote on something like that, but I really would like to, get the pulse of those that use the building department and their opinion about A, where it is, and B, how we can improve it. Yeah. Absolutely.
Well, we can build on this and bring that back.
If you would like, but no problem.
30-day proposal?
Take care.
I'll move it if you want to vote.
Okay, and I'll second it. What did you move?
I move that we, on our side of it, that is basically, survey those that are utilizing the building department as far as some places, how was their experience, B, and then perhaps we can ask some of those that are in the industry about where we can improve it.
I'd like to add, the Joe Paladins and Andrew Kennedys and Helene, spread the word, ask these folks, this is their time, instead of complaining and convention, this is the time to make progress. So spread the word. We want the constructive criticism. So this is their time to step up and get their comments in. So.
Yes, I see one more person in the audience, please.
Good morning, Renee Renzi, Waverly Place, Vero Beach. I guess I'm a wet blanket. I have lived in London, England. I have lived in New York City. I have lived in Montgomery County, Maryland. I have lived in Fairfax County, Virginia. All go for business places. And when we moved from there, we found the quality of life was so deteriorated in a short span of time, 5 years, we were happy to leave. When we finally got to Vero Beach, we said, thank God. We can lay back, relax, and enjoy life a little bit. So be very careful you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. I remember going on one of the Economic Development Council tours of newly established businesses in the county, and a couple of the CEOs of those businesses said they moved their businesses here because they, as individuals, the CEOs, like to go fishing, like to play golf, like to relax, and so they moved the whole business here so they could do that. So be very careful. I mean, some of you up here have lived here all your lives. You don't know what it's like to live in one of these ever-expanding communities. They get to be very miserable, believe me. And so, Vero Beach is great. Don't spoil it. Don't go too far overboard. Sorry to be a wet blanket, but I couldn't sit there any longer. Because business expansion is not always the best thing. And having children go away to work is not the great tragedy. I went 3,000 miles away from home, and it didn't break the economy. Children should spread out. So be careful, that's all I'm saying.
I'm ready for the question, Madam Chair.
Okay. Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. We'll see you in 30 days. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We are going to run this to the Economic Development Council. I think that's because we don't want to do this separate. I just want to make that clear.
Right.
There's another item I'd like to clarify. There was a mention that additional layoffs in the building department. We're not laying off.
I didn't understand you.
There was a mention on the podium about laying off additional people in the building department. We are not. We've laid off. We're pretty comfortable where we are. So I don't want the employees in the building department getting all nervous.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification.
If I could say something, and I don't like defending Joe Baird, it's just something that goes against me. But in Joe's defense, no, seriously, Joe and I and his staff had a meeting back in early January, and I came up with asked for the meeting for the sole purpose of bringing up some of the things that Commissioner O'Brien and Davis and others are talking about. I was pleasantly surprised to find out that they were ahead of the game on some of their computer models and some of the things that they were doing, and encouraged Joe at that time to definitely keep that up because he was already headed in the right direction. So that was, I didn't say it a while ago, but that's sort of where I was headed whenever I said some of these other things can be sort of worked out and fine-tuned as we go. We just need to be going.
Yes.
Because I think they're already headed on some of these, and the staff will, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised at some of that. But thank you, and I think he's going in the right direction.
Good, thanks. Well, we're on the road and we're, heading in the right direction, and we're escalating the speed. So the next item is Solid Waste Disposal District.
Move approval of minutes of April 8th.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Approval of regular minutes,
Move.
Second.
April the 22nd. All in favor?
Aye.
Work passes 5-0. Work authorization number 5, final payment of Geosinic, I can't even see this, Consultants, Inc. for 2007 annual engineering services and environmental compliance.
Move staff recommendation.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Passes 5-0. Work authorization number 8, final payment of Camp Dressler and McGee, Inc. to 2007 annual permitting services.
Move approval.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Work order number 16 to GeoSync Consultants, Inc. for engineering services with the construction of vertical expansion of Class 1 landfill on-site borrow pit and expansion of landfill gas collection system.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. This is a very eventful and productive meeting. Meeting adjourned.